HOA tried seizing my garage, but instead of giving in, I turned the tables on them. What happened next shocked the entire neighborhood and left the HOA board speechless. The moment I received that letter from the HOA, my stomach dropped. I stood in my kitchen holding the envelope, reading the words over and over again, almost unable to believe what I was seeing. They claimed my garage was in violation, and they had the right to take it over. My garage. The one I had worked so hard for. The one where I kept not only my car, but years of tools, projects, and memories. At first, I laughed. I thought maybe it was some kind of mistake, some typo, some mix-up in paperwork. But as I kept reading, my laughter turned to anger. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. A calculated move by the HOA board to scare me into giving up something that belonged to me. And that's when I knew I wasn't going to let them win. Because here's the truth. HOAs like to act like they're kings of the neighborhood. They send letters, they slap fines, they write threats, and they think people will bow down. Most people do. But not me. I've never been the kind of guy to let bullies push me around, and that's exactly what this was. Bullying. The letter claimed my garage was not in compliance with community guidelines. What does that even mean? I had painted it. I had maintained it. I had followed every rule they set. But the HOA didn't care about rules. They cared about power. And power is what they wanted from me. I remember sitting at my dining table, spreading all their letters out, each one nastier than the last. First, they fined me for leaving my trash bin out an extra day. Then, they complained about the color of my mailbox. Now, they were threatening to take my garage? It was like they were daring me to fight back. And I'll admit, for a moment, I thought about giving in. Fighting an HOA is not easy. They have lawyers. They have money. They have the backing of the neighborhood. But then I thought about everything I had sacrificed for that house, everything I had worked for, every late night, every early morning, every paycheck I saved just to make this home mine. And I thought, no way. No way I'm letting them steal what I worked for. So, I decided to play their game. But I wasn't going to play it the way they wanted. I wasn't going to fight with angry emails. I wasn't going to fight with shouting matches at board meetings. No. I was going to fight smart. The first step was research. I stayed up late night after night reading the HOA bylaws, combing through every single rule, every single line. And let me tell you, those documents are written to confuse you. They use fancy language. They twist words. They bury important details under piles of legal terms. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I highlighted. I bookmarked. I made notes in the margins. And then, buried deep in the bylaws, I found something interesting. The HOA board itself didn't fully own the office space they were using. It was leased. Leased from a private owner who was quietly thinking of selling. My eyes widened. Right then and there, I had an idea that made me smile for the first time in weeks. If they wanted my garage so badly, maybe it was time I took something from them. Something bigger. Something that would leave them stunned. But before I could act, I had to endure weeks of harassment. Letters. Calls. Notices stuck on my door. They were relentless. They thought if they kept the pressure on, I'd cave. But the more they pushed, the stronger I got. I stopped seeing their letters as threats and started seeing them as fuel. Every notice was another reason to fight harder. Every phone call was another reminder of why I couldn't quit. Neighbors started noticing. Some whispered, "Why don't you just give in? It's not worth it." Others quietly cheered me on. They had been victims too. They knew what it felt like to be crushed under the HOA's power. But no one dared to stand up. That made me even more determined. The turning point came at a community meeting. The HOA board sat at their table, smug and confident, passing around their papers, talking down to residents like they were children. And then it happened. They brought up my garage. Right there in front of everyone. They made me out to be a troublemaker, a rebel, someone who thought he was above the rules. I sat there, silent, letting them speak, letting them think they had the upper hand. But deep down, I knew something they didn't. Because while they were busy plotting against me, I had already been in contact with the owner of their office garage. And guess what? He was tired of dealing with them too. He was tired of their late payments, their complaints, their endless demands. And he was ready to sell. To me. The moment I signed the papers, I felt a wave of power shift. All those weeks of stress, all those nights of anger, all those letters filled with threats, it all felt worth it. Because now, I wasn't just a homeowner fighting back. I was the guy who owned the HOA's office garage. I didn't tell them right away. I waited. I let them keep pushing, keep writing, keep thinking they were winning. And then, one day, I walked into their office during business hours. The same office where they had called me names, sent me letters, and tried to humiliate me. I placed the deed on the table and said, "Looks like you're renting from me now." Silence. Pure silence. You could have heard a pin drop. The smug smiles melted off their faces. Their power, their control, their arrogance, it all crumbled in that one moment. And that, right there, is the beauty of standing up for yourself. Sometimes the best revenge is not shouting, not fighting, not even winning in court. Sometimes, the best revenge is flipping the script so hard that the bullies don't even know what hit them. Now, I know what you're thinking. That must have been expensive. Was it worth it? Let me tell you this. Peace of mind is priceless. Respect is priceless. The look on their faces when they realized I now controlled the very building they worked from? Priceless. But this isn't just about money or property. This is about the principle. If you let bullies push you once, they'll push you forever. If you let them take 1 inch, they'll take a mile. Sometimes you have to draw the line and say, enough. And that's exactly what I did. So here's the lesson. HOAs, bosses, bullies, anyone who tries to take what's yours, they only win if you let them. Don't be afraid to stand up. Don't be afraid to fight back. And don't be afraid to flip the script in a way they never saw coming. Because at the end of the day, power isn't about how many letters you can write or how many fines you can throw. Power is about resilience. About courage. About refusing to back down when you know you're right. And me. I didn't just save my garage. I turned the tables so hard that now, every time they walk into their office, they're reminded of one thing. They tried to take from me. And they lost everything. If you've ever felt crushed by an unfair HOA, or bullied by people who think they have power over you, remember this story. Don't give in. Stand tall. Fight smart. And when you win, you'll inspire others to do the same. If you want to hear how the battle continued, and the shocking twists that followed, stick around for Section 2, because trust me, it gets even crazier. Owning the HOA's office garage was only the beginning. What I didn't realize at the time was how much chaos this single move would unleash in the neighborhood. At first, I thought it was over. I thought I had won. But the truth is, when you embarrass people who love power, they don't go down quietly. They fight harder. And the HOA? Oh, they weren't ready to admit defeat. The first week after I revealed the deed, I felt unstoppable. I'd walk past neighbors and they'd give me quiet nods, little smirks, as if to say, "Good job. You did what none of us could." Even the ones who once told me to give up now whispered, "You're brave." For the first time in months, I could sleep without worrying about a new letter taped to my door. But my peace didn't last long. The HOA board regrouped. They came back with new strategies, new rules, new threats. They thought they could bury me under paperwork, fines, and scare tactics. But here's the thing about bullies. Once you've seen them shaken, they're never as scary again. One of the first tricks they tried was intimidation. Suddenly, I started getting letters claiming my lawn was too dry, my shutters were too faded, and my porch light was too dim. It was laughable. They were literally trying to fine me for the way the sun hit my grass. I almost framed one of the letters because it was so ridiculous. But instead of getting mad, I played it cool. Every time they sent a letter, I sent back a short, polite response. Please refer to section ____ of your lease agreement. Signed, your landlord. That one signature, your landlord, was enough to drive them crazy. And oh, the meetings. You should have seen the meetings. Every time I showed up, their faces tightened. They avoided eye contact. They spoke in clipped tones. But the residents, they started warming up to me more and more. Because when I stood up to the board, I didn't just fight for myself. I gave everyone else hope. People began telling me their stories. A single mom who got fined for leaving a bike in her driveway. An older couple who were forced to repaint their fence 3 times because the shade of white wasn't approved. A veteran who was threatened with foreclosure because he parked his truck in the wrong spot. Their stories poured out like bottled-up secrets, and suddenly, I wasn't just one man fighting an HOA. I was the voice of a neighborhood tired of being controlled. So, I started documenting everything. Every letter, every fine, every complaint. I created a binder so thick, it looked like a college textbook. And then, I went a step further. I started attending every HOA meeting, not as a silent victim, but as their landlord. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just asked questions. Calm, simple questions that exposed their nonsense. Why is this fine $200? Where does the money go? Who approved this? And let me tell you, when people who thrive on control get asked hard questions in front of everyone, they squirm. The more I pushed back, the more the neighborhood woke up. People who used to sit quietly at meetings now raised their hands. They questioned rules. They demanded answers. The board was losing control, and they knew it. And then came the breaking point. The HOA tried to hold a special vote to increase dues. They claimed it was for community improvements, but we all knew the truth. It was to cover their legal bills. The same legal bills they racked up trying to fight me. And this time, I refused to let it slide. I went door to door. I talked to neighbors who never attended meetings. I explained how their money was being used. I showed them the binder, page after page of fines and threats. And something amazing happened. People started caring. People started getting angry. The night of the vote, the meeting hall was packed. Normally, you'd see maybe 10 or 15 people show up. That night, the place was standing room only. The board tried to act confident, but their voices shook. When the ballots were counted, the result was clear. The community voted no. Overwhelmingly no. That was the moment the tide turned. 4 years, the HOA had ruled with fear. That night, they realized fear doesn't work when people stand together. But the board still had one last card to play. They tried to intimidate me legally, sending threatening letters about breach of confidentiality and defamation. They thought big words would scare me into silence. But what they didn't realize was, I wasn't alone anymore. The neighbors who once whispered support now openly stood by me. And together, we decided it was time for change. Within months, residents organized petitions. People who never thought they'd have a voice signed their names boldly. We demanded transparency. We demanded accountability. And finally, we demanded new leadership. Election day came, and it was like the whole neighborhood had been waiting for this moment. Ballots were cast, voices were heard, and when the results were announced, it was history. The old board was out. A new board, made up of everyday neighbors who actually cared about the community, was in. And you know what the best part was? I didn't even run for a position. I didn't want power. I just wanted fairness. I wanted peace. But watching my neighbors cheer, watching people who once felt powerless now stand tall, that was the real victory. Looking back, I realized something important. This fight was never just about a garage. It was about respect. It was about proving that no one has the right to take from you what you've worked for. It was about showing that when you stand up, others find the courage to stand too. And yes, I still own the HOA's office garage. Every time I drive past, I can't help but smile. Not out of spite, but out of pride. Because that building is a reminder that even when the odds are stacked against you, even when the powerful try to crush you, one person's courage can flip the script. So, if you're listening to this and you're fighting your own battle, maybe against an HOA, maybe against a boss, maybe against someone who thinks they own you, remember this. You don't have to fight their way. You don't have to scream, or threaten, or give up. You can fight smart. You can fight steady. And when you win, you don't just win for yourself. You win for everyone watching. Because the truth is, bullies lose their power the second you stop being afraid. And when you stop being afraid, you become unstoppable. So, what about you? Have you ever faced an HOA, a boss, or anyone who tried to control you. Don't stay silent. Share your story, stand up, and let others see your strength. Because one voice can spark a movement. And who knows, maybe your story will be the one that inspires an entire neighborhood to rise up, just like mine did.